Okay, we are live here in Salem, and the January 25th, 2023 quarterly board meeting of the Oregon State Marine Board is hereby called to order. I'd like to take a moment to thank our staff for representing the agency really well at the Portland Boat Show. I learned a lot visiting some of the vendors, chatting with our staff and some of the marine law folks. I also want to thank Eddie Persichetti for inviting me to the PwC training back in November. Again, it was really great to meet more of our law enforcement partners and watch them grow their skills on PwCs. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the October 26th meeting. Any comments, questions, or concerns about the meeting notes?
I really like the way that the new format with the time stamps on those, so that it's you're able to go back and kind of look at things. So thank you, Jennifer. I'd like to make a motion to approve those as written.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting notes from October 26th. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, the meeting minutes are approved. Our next item is request for public comment. Before we get started there, I'd just like to say that the board does encourage members of the public to speak to us. And as a reminder, the board will not consider testimony on any items up for a decision on today's agenda. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to speak and allowed slightly longer at the chair's discretion. Do not expect the board members to interact with you after you present your comments, although board members may ask questions to clarify a point that you made. Board members, a reminder, if speakers are addressing items which have closed to public comment, we can hear those comments, but the comments should not be considered in your decision making. Feel free to ask a speaker a clarifying question, but because of public notice rules, any deeper discussion with the commenter, staff, or other board members on a topic needs to be brought back as an agenda item for future meeting or work session. Jennifer, do we have anybody signed up to speak via video?
Not on video, no.
Not in video. Okay, do we have somebody signed up?
Yeah, Jeff.
Okay, would you like to come?
Yes, absolutely.
And introduce yourself to us?
Absolutely. So good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Wilmarth. I'm a outfitter here in Oregon. I own a company called Pacific Con Charters. So we take people fishing for a living as a guide on saltwater. So I'm here to speak to you guys about some of my interactions with the Marine Board and as an Oregon outfitter. And when you're ready, I'm ready as well.
Go ahead.
So I've been an Oregon stakeholder for 3 years. In that time, my company has been harassed, slandered, stolen from, vandalized, and even threats of violence against myself, my affiliates, and my family. And this is all done by other Oregon outfitters. So with that, in January 2022, I came forward to the Marine Board and decided to try to solve some problems there. So I lodged complaints between January and November. Those, in my perception, were unheard with no responses to or no actions towards my issues. So when asked for a policy from the Marine Board on the handlings of those interactions, the Marine Board could not actually produce a policy of how they would handle that. When asked for supporting documents on their decision on one of my issues, they were not willing to provide that. So I think at this point, the Marine Board should take a second and look at this internally and decide what they want to do. I looked around the industry. This is not an isolated incident. The grievance of the incident is large. But whenever something's brought forward, there should be a policy that's timely, equitable, and has due process, so people can follow a systematic approach rather than how an individual feels. There should be more process that would be able to be supporting that decision. And with that, I'll take some time for questions, and thank you for your time and consideration for my testimony.
Thank you for coming out today. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Wilmarth? All right, great. Thank you for coming out. Our next item is the agency director's report.
All right, Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Larry Warren, Director of your Oregon State Marine Board. Got the written report, and I just wanted to add a few things and then take any questions. First, I would announce that the governor has appointed some new staff in the natural resource area. So previously, Jason Miner was the natural resource policy advisor to the governor. It is now Jeff Huntington. I've only met him once online. I haven't got a chance to meet him, but he comes with a really rich background. He's been a director of an agency. He's an environmental attorney. He's worked at Oregon State. He's worked with some DSL issues. And I think his perspective as having been a director and been around government for a long time will be very beneficial. They also appointed Karen Power, who we would have formerly known as Representative Power, to be his deputy. And I think that she's going to focus a lot on climate and energy. And so those are the two new policy advisor folks. As you can imagine, they're just trying to get up to speed, figure out what's going on, see what the governor's priorities are, figure out what agencies are working with which agencies and what needs done next. So those things are starting to happen. And I think, again, both Jeff and Karen are really, their backgrounds are going to help us a lot. So if we have governor policy type issues, that's who we'll be working with. If we have legislative issues, they're actually having a different team. So Governor Kotek's really trying to set up her office a little differently to where there's kind of a policy and an action type format. So a group that's really trying to drive things, get things through, get things done, and another group that's kind of the thinking group. That's my summation of that. And I think that will yield some better results for agencies where maybe it's a little clearer where we take problems and how we get them worked through. And I think it'll help align the exec branch on issues. So that's out there. The governor, I think it's been 2 weeks ago, released expectations of agency directors. There was 10 expectations. I won't go through every single one of them. I have done a gap analysis, formed a plan for how we get there. Good news is we're in really good shape on it. I think we're missing a succession plan, and we have an affirmative action plan, but we don't have a DEI plan, and we need both. And so I've got a plan to get both of those done. But one of the requirements right off the bat is that you, as a director, have to receive a review every 2 years. And there's an example where you all have done a review every year. They may or may not be coming out with some new templates in the future. So as you may recall, we had Amber Daniels came to our July meeting last year. She's our human resource person that we contract with through DAS. And so I've asked her to come in April to the board meeting to where she can talk to you all about whatever. She'll be aware of the new format and any new templates and any new ways that a director review should be conducted. It actually says every 2 years, but I suggest that we just stay on our annual review cycle since this agency's got a good history and one of the only agencies that's got a history of doing that, I think, every year. So Amber will come in April. She'll talk to the board about what they want for a new process, how they want that to look. So that'll keep us on track there. Wanted to highlight that I think it was in November, December, January. We had Wasco County, the program, Marine Patrol program. Unfortunately, they just were having some challenges getting all their staff positions filled, and they had to make some really difficult choices within their program. And so they, at this time, we have terminated their contract with us. And so, the sheriff has a really difficult job to keep his county safe. And I can't imagine the choices they have to make between road patrol and keeping citizens safe and marine patrol. And so I just wanted to highlight this one because, where we left it was just this was a good parting of ways, and that when they're ready, we're ready. And that any time along the way, if they need help, talk to us. If they need to send someone to training, if they want help picking out some equipment, we'll be there for them. But part of why I wanted to bring that up is we've got a lot of sheriffs across our state are still struggling with this exact problem of they can't hire people, and then they have a tough time getting them through training. And if you're a sheriff and you're figuring out how to allocate your resources, you've got, keeping your citizens safe on dry land, keeping your citizens safe on the water, and that's a tough priority for a lot of these sheriffs to sort through. So we're keeping an eye on that, and if we see anything that looks like it's growing as a bigger issue, we'll have Brian come and give us a talk about that. But I think we're in a good spot on that in terms, and just wanted to highlight that it was an amicable situation with Wasco, and I respect the sheriff's decision to do that. A lot of you have asked about board appointments or reappointments and where we're at on that. The governor did appoint their person who's going to be their director of executive appointments. And actually last night got an email that just said, we're on board, we're figuring out the process. And for now, keep telling folks that want to apply new to just go to the governor's webpage and apply through that process. and that very soon they would be giving us instructions on how they wanted to handle Senate and non-Senate board appointments. And so I think we're probably a few weeks off from knowing what the plan is. And, you know, I think there's quite a few out there that need done. And I always remind folks, there's some boards where the board members are daily workers. So there's some agencies that are getting real nervous because they need those appointments to conduct their business. So I don't know where the Marine Board appointments will stack up in that, but certainly we have a couple folks that would be up for reappointment. We have Val on, you know, what is it, year 27? What are you, you know, we've got Val is, you know, or sorry, member early that has been around for a long time and grateful that she continues to serve. So we'll be highlighting all those to the person. And then I guess just as a final note, and this is maybe a good one where we're lucky to have a fishing guide amongst us, is you heard from Mr. Wilmer during public comment, and I just wondered if member earlier had, you know, I put in the administration piece that we'd had a complaint about our guide complaint process, and just wondered if member early had any thoughts on, you know, is there something that staff could do for the guide community on this topic?
Thanks, Director. Yes, in fact, I was going to comment afterwards and kind of ask, you know, some of our ethical standards, our guide professional ethical standards have been around for quite some time, and they haven't exactly progressed with the new technologies that are around. So I would recommend that we throw this to the GAC and have them look at those professional standards and probably update those to include social media issues that are happening right now. I know that just like in Jeff's area, we are seeing more and more issues between guides, and the GAC has dealt with a few of those issues also in different parts of the state. Not just on the coastal areas, but I know there was one in Southern Oregon where there was long-term animosity between a couple of guides, and some of it had to do with social media. Some of it had to do with, you know, clients, maybe not the extent of what Jeff had seen in his area, but still, there's a lot of that going on. And as there are more and more people in the industry, and the industry, I guess, gets more competitive, would be the best way to put it, both for fish and for clients, then I think we need to have a little bit of an update with that. The other thing that I think would be helpful would be to look at the Marine Board process for filing a complaint as a guide and an outfitter, maybe for other issues as well, and have some kind of a flow chart that a person could go to and see that says, you know, this is my first step. These are the options of what are going to happen. This is my next step, depending on what that outcome is. I know that we're very, very limited with a lot of law enforcement right now, but I think that would be very beneficial for somebody who is looking to make a complaint, just to see what happens next. And then having those standards just scrutinized and looked at by the GAC and see what the feeling is around the state. I would guess that we're not going to see any differences between other areas of the state than what I see down here in my area. Just a few thoughts.
Thank you, Val. Do you have any other items for your report?
No other items for my report. Whenever you're ready,
Okay.
Chair Jackson, I could.
Are there any other comments, questions for Director Warren?
I have a couple things.
I just had,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I just had a quick question for Director Warren about going back to the issue with law enforcement agencies and staffing and budgets. I know particularly here in the metro area, of course, we hear a lot about law enforcement agencies and the staffing issues that they're having. But I was just curious what impact, if any, that has on budgets, particularly the budget that the Marine Board supports law enforcement agencies with. Are we adjusting numbers to reflect staffing shortages? Are numbers staying the same? What sort of impact is it having?
Sure. Remember, Brian, that's a really good question, and probably why Brian's got the same haircut as your son there on the screen, is trying to make some of those adjustments. And So, obviously it's delicate balance when we talk about maybe pulling back funding. If they're, for instance, a program loses a Marine Patrol person because they're going to switch them to road full time. And now they're not going to use our money. And in some ways it's easy to get caught up in thinking, oh, we're going to save money. That's great. But I think of it like we're losing an opportunity to have Marine Patrol out on the water. And so usually in those types of situations, it's a conversation with Brian Paulson and his team around, hey, we're not going to take the money away forever, but if you're not going to use it, we have a program over here that can use it. And so this time we're going to try to prop up some of those activities over here where they can. Overall, big picture, we have started engaging some of the program, well, all of the programs, on the idea of how we just come up with our funding mix and matrix and different ways we think about allocating those funds up front. And we typically get a lot of reversion at the end of years, but it's difficult to count on reversion. And again, kind of going back to that idea that reversion is just hours that weren't spent out on the water helping boaters. So it is impacting our programs. It's impacting it mostly in savings. But again, I just would want to convey to the board that we don't look at the savings necessarily as a good thing. We look at them as we want to try to figure out how to get that money out there and being used, and also be respectful of programs that are experiencing a short-term problem and not creating a long-term funding problem by shifting their funding too quickly.
Thank you.
I'm looking at Brian just to make sure he's not shaking his head at me, but he's not. So I got a thumbs up over there. So.
All right, Craig.
Yeah, I have a few things. Fatalities. We've had a couple of initiatives that we talked about to try to address fatalities and reduce it. We primarily focus on education and PFDs. I'm not sure where we stand with the PFD initiative we've been talking about. But the other concern I have is, I don't always get a follow-up on some of these accidents. I know they occurred. I know they're in the media. But like the one in Newburgh Pool, it was so tragic. I don't know that there's anything we could do about that, but I don't really have the final outcome of what happened there. It did sound like there was nothing that we could have done to help prevent it, maybe education. But it'd be nice if we had some follow-up on that, so we know that we're doing everything we can.
Member Withy, that's a good point. And on the hot ones, I usually try to give the board a heads up if they're in the media. We've had, just so folks know, we've had unfortunately 3 boating fatalities already this year, which is not a great start. 2, I think maybe the investigation's still going, but it appears to be CO2 poisoning in a boat cabin up in the Portland area. And that one was right around the first of the year. And then the one that hit the media last week that made the rounds was there was a fatality in Netarts where somebody took a really small Kevlar raft, the kind you'd probably buy more in a Walmart type store, and headed out to the bar and drowned. And without all the information, I don't want to go into a lot of detail other than just to say, I think they weren't able to rule out suicide as a possibility. It was just a really tough situation. And had the parents of either some bad decision making or perhaps personal choice to do that. So those are our 3 fatalities for the year. But what I'm thinking to the broader picture, member Withy, is we produce a report every year to the Coast Guard around our fatalities. And I think what would be good is that when we do that and we submit it, is that at the next board meeting that year, we make that an agenda item where we come and just talk to you about the fatalities list for the last year so that there's at least a regular rhythm and report back.
I'd appreciate that. I think it'd be helpful. I think we need to keep that forefront. We're doing everything we can to preclude fatalities in the future. And there's lessons to be learned in every one of these to some degree. The next item I had was on the Columbia Slough Watershed Council. It was great to see that that was very well attended. My concern is we don't have the capacity to have everybody participate who wants to. So I'm just wondering if there's something we can do to help the Watershed Council in increasing their capacity and encourage introduction of new boaters on the water. So, I'd just like to consider that and take a look at it and see if there's something we can do to aid them.
Yeah, and I think member Withy, as you know, having interacted with Janine Black, that's always on the forefront of her mind, and something that she works tenaciously at is to do those things. And I know that particular organization is one that she's put a lot of effort into and working with them. And in addition, there's also other organizations. And so it's an area where I would say Janine has put a lot of effort into it for the agency, and we're reaping a lot of reward. We're seeing that in some of the grants that are coming back to us, and we're hearing that in the communities. I think yesterday Janine shared that somebody from Washington even called her because some of these groups are saying that Oregon's doing it right, and they wanted to know how to do it the way we're doing it. And so that doesn't happen by accident. That happens by a lot of work from staff out there pushing that. So it's a good problem to have when we have so many people, but it's also a challenge as well.
You bet. It's a worthwhile program in my mind, and I'd like to see us take as much benefit from it as we can.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I add just on your comment? We are going to be talking about the Waterway Access Grant, Waterway Access Permit Program in April. And I know we've talked about maybe having some of those organizations come that have received our grants in the past come and talk to us about what they've done and what they've achieved, but also things that we could be doing better to help them achieve their goals. So I know Janine and Josh are both aware of some of the concerns I've expressed about it. You might want to get in touch with them if there's any specific items you'd like to see in that work item for our next meeting.
That's great. Another item was the law enforcement training that we have scheduled in Madras. I think it's wonderful training. When we went down to participate with the jet boat training on the Rogue, I think we learned a lot, got a lot out of it. So I wondered if we couldn't set up a board day where board members could attend that training. I found the most beneficial part of the training was when they were on the water, and I accompanied them on one of the boats to see what they did at each station and training law enforcement personnel. So I'd be interested in maybe having a work day or a board day, whatever you want to call it, where board members come and participate in that. Just for consideration.
Sure. Remember with I would just, as a good reminder, any board member is welcome at any of our trainings anytime. The one in Madras, the annual training there, the academy, it's a good one. As you pointed out, there's a week of classroom and there's a week of on water. So you get different things depending on the day you want to come. And I would just offer that you can come for as little or as much of it as you'd like. It's always best to coordinate with Eddie Persichetti ahead of time or Brian, just so that they know you're coming and they can plan to make sure that there's always going to be room for you on a boat, but just so they make sure they link you up with somebody that they think will be a good fit for you. And then the classroom training, you can sit through at any time. And if you needed help with travel, Jennifer Cooper could always help you with the travel, since that would be official board work. And it's a great training. It's good. It's always nice to see who's coming in. And I think what's been really impressive to me the last few years has actually been our new trainers. There's just some amazing new trainers. And it's been really encouraging as we've lost some of the experienced trainers to see that next group coming in and how amazing they are at helping the students that go from not driving a boat to doing some pretty complicated things in just a short period of time. So.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board related to the director's report?
I just have a couple of comments. First of all, thank you to Ashley for all the social media posts and the email correspondence. I think it's really important to keep voters informed of what's going on with the agency, and also just to keep them thinking about safety out there. I like the new chart with that shows the dual charts for the financials. So thank you to Christy for that. The visual is really nice. I have a question regarding the debris that we're seeing from all of the wildfires around the state. With the shortage of Marine Patrol, Marine officers, how are we getting notified of possible obstructions within the waterways? Is that coming from boaters? Are those just coming in as tips? How do we find out about those? Yeah,
remember early, I would say probably all of the above. We hear from facility owners and providers. We hear from Marine Patrol. We've got a more robust reporting app to report hazards, and I know we get pieces in on that. And it's a challenge. I know a few weeks ago I was out on the river on the Willamette, and to get out of the boat ramp, it was almost like entering traffic. You had to like wait to enter in between the 100-foot trees coming down the river, and they were all fire burned trees. It was every single one of them it was high water. And it was just a good reminder that we're going to be dealing with this for quite a few years. But I would just say all of the above. We hear from facility providers, we hear from Marine Patrol, we've got our report of hazards. We're displaying that out on our boat Oregon map. So if folks are listening that haven't used that tool before, it's great to go out and look at the hazards. We oftentimes have pictures of those, and just, it's going to be a real struggle for the next few years as we deal with all that fire debris coming down.
Well, once again, thank you to Ashley for getting those out on social media too. I think that it's really important, especially when we find out about a new hazard, that it gets out there as quick as possible so that somebody doesn't get caught unaware. So thanks for that. I don't have any other comments. Thank you.
I don't have any questions or comments. So I would like to add, though, on that issue of the reporting system. I follow a couple of the whitewater social media groups, and their commentary is still that the boat site is kind of clunky to use, and therefore they don't use it. And they've kind of created their own whitewater based. And one of the things I'm thinking about doing is just putting a comment on their comments that say something like, you know, it's not just whitewater people who need to know this information, and that in some cases, people who are tuned into using our site, you know, put the information on our site despite the fact that it's clunky, because other people rely on our site. And I don't know if that's some kind of messaging Ashley might want to try to put out and get into more of the whitewater moving water community.
Chair Jackson, we can do some messaging around just maybe using it. I guess it's always difficult with technology to think about all the different people that you serve. And I do try to remember if there's a website I use regularly that it might not feel clunky to me, or it might feel clunky to others.
Right.
If folks don't, it's layers. It's kind of a layer approach, and turning layers on and turning layers off. And if somebody's not used to using some of those type of things, or they're used to seeing it a certain way, I could see how that might be a challenge for them. So I think we could do some messaging around using it, how to use it. And Brian is just, if you really want to come up and talk, Brian, I'll let you, but sure.
Sure. Chair Jackson, Vice Chair Early, members of the board, for the record, Brian Paulson, Boating Safety Program Manager for the Oregon State Marine Board. I will start by answering Vice Chair Early's question regarding obstructions. I know Director Warren did answer, but we work with a lot of agency partners, Forest Service, outfitter guides. Our boating obstruction reporting tools, we rolled that out in 2019 late and into 2020. It's been very critical with reporting wildfire related obstructions. You know, as these trees start to decay, fall in the river, we see more and more obstructions. Our role at the Marine Board is really the mechanism of reporting. We have these publicly available tools that the obstructions are reported through. We also have law enforcement reporting tools, and then we have our maps. So in regards to the boating map, and then we have our obstruction dashboard, there is definitely functionality between the two. One is much easier, I would agree. In regards to the apps and the reporting tools, we partnered with American Whitewater when we developed them. We actually had 3 different individuals from that group. We worked over the course of 6 months to develop those. I would say the engagement was good. We also, on our dashboard, if you look at the obstructions, we have obstructions that for, you know, the beginner boater would be a challenge, but we also have obstructions that are on creeks that are because of advanced whitewater person reported that type of obstruction. So I think it's important, as we serve all boaters, to realize that our obstruction dashboard has obstructions that would not be difficult for intermediate person to vote, but would be for a basic. So we keep a balance. We do audit those obstructions to make sure the map is updated as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Any other questions or comments related to the director's report?
I think Chair Jackson, I would just go back to, remember earlier had suggested a path forward on some of the guide activity, looking at the process, working with the guides, working out a process. I took notes. I saw a whole bunch of other people in the room taking notes. So I'd suggest that in our April director's report, we'll have an update on where we're at with that and what we're doing so the board knows what's going on. So
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we're going to move on to item B, Grant 1717, Oregon State Parks, Mayor State Park.
Jackson, Vice Chair Early, members of the board. For the record, this is Janine Black, the Budding Facilities Program Manager. And before we jump right into that, I wanted to give the board kind of an idea of what this, if the board approves these, what this would mean to the 2023-25 grant funding. So historically, for the last couple of bienniums, we have around $8.5 million of state and federal money to be used for our special payments. That's money that the board approves for our maintenance program, for our small grants program, for some technical assistance, as well as for our competitive program, the Budding Facility Grant, for both motorized and non-motorized. So when we get through doing all that, if the board approves both of the projects in front of them today, we will have, I'm estimating because we don't have our budget finalized, about $3.3 to $3.5 million available for the remaining portion of the biennium, the 23-25. The board has routinely conditionally approved grants, especially ones that have been in the process for a long time, in order to utilize in-water windows and seize opportunities. I do want to let the board know that this will be one of the most competitive bienniums for non-motorized funding and motorized funding that the board has seen in a long time. It just shows how much need is out there. It wouldn't surprise me that we will be at least 4 to 1 oversubscribed for our non-motorized funds and probably 2 to 1 for our motorized. So I just want to give the boards a heads up that you will have some definite hard decisions come the June meeting. So I want to move right into Mayor. With me today is Daryl Monk. He's a senior project manager with State Parks. And this has been a project that has long been in the making. It's gone through a ton of permit turbulence, and we are now ready to actually do the construction. Staff is recommending approval of this. ODF&W has committed a significant amount of federal money. And so I'm going to go ahead and recommend the board conditionally approve this grant subject to legislative approval of the agency's 2023-25 budget in the amount of $342,000 of Budding Facility grant funds, and to be matched with a total of $1,687,011. And Daryl, do you want to add anything on this project?
Good morning, Chair Jackson, board members, Director Warren. So if you're not familiar with this facility, this has certainly been a disrepair for many years. It's well beyond its life expectancy. And I think the main issue there has been the boat ramp. It's a concrete skip plank boat ramp and subject to a lot of undermining from power loading. And we've removed probably over a dozen concrete planks because they've broken, causing damage to trailers as people are launching and retrieving their watercraft. But in addition, the docks are also, I believe, the original docks there, so they're in disrepair. Parking lot has no configuration for circulation, so if you actually drive into the lot and all the stalls are full with your trailer, you have to back all the way out the entrance there's no turnaround. Also, there's limited ADA accessibility to the restroom, boat ramp, parking stalls. There's no treatment of stormwater, so we'll be adding bioswales to that too. And then also relocating the vault toilet to a more centralized location to both boating facility and our day use area.
Thank you. Any questions for?
We got a couple.
Go ahead.
Is there any dredging associated with this, or is the water depth adequate for launching? And
there is no dredging proposed for this, and it does get shallow through there, but there's still adequate water depth, is my understanding, even during relatively low water.
Yeah, it's a very shallow, flat basin. If you look at the topography of what the underwater survey is, other than the gigantic hole where the existing boat ramp is from all the power loading, it is fairly flat all the way through there.
So looking at the present launch area, it appears there's only one lane for launching. Are you going to install 2 lanes in the future and take full use of that ramp?
So no, this is going to be a single lane ramp. This is an area that is rich in sensitivity for both historic and cultural sensitivity, the Columbia Gorge Commission, tons of endangered species. That's very limited. I think in the future, we would be looking at possibly installing a short-term tie-up over on the adjacent spit where some single car parking is. That dock could potentially become a combination of a fishing dock, non-motorized dock, and the short-term tie-up. That would help with guides. They can go launch, they can pick their customers up over there, they could drop them off. It could help improve the traffic flow around the boat ramp. But this in itself was a heavy lift to get to where we're at.
You show parking in the woods and all over the place. If it's that sensitive an area, how are we allowing that to occur?
Well, that's a good question. The users there, not only do they fill up the parking lot, they line the streets all the way up to our entrance. And you're right, they are parking on the grassed areas. And while I'm not there and not involved with our enforcement, I'm sure that's probably a sensitive area. I would imagine that they are enforcing it to some degree, but with that many users and our limited park staff, we don't have park staff dedicated to this park, so they only come multiple times a day for maintenance reasons. And so unfortunately, you get somebody that can park in the grass, they're out boating, there's not much you can do. I suppose we could tow their vehicle, but we'd have some other issues.
But are there any other solutions besides this launch area to solve the capacity requirements? How far away are the other launch sites?
Yeah, so in the staff report, it does give in the application, gave the proximity of the sites. Rooster Rock, it has a lot of land, but it's virtually unusable. It has shoaled in so much in the channel. It actually was even closed to non-motorized boaters for part of the summer because they were having to go through large amounts of mud in order to access the Columbia. Dalton Point is just hammered with wind and it is very shallow. There is not a lot of alternatives in this location. We did invest funding to have an analysis done of Rooster Rock to take the boat ramp from being in the cove and actually putting it directly on the Columbia. There is merit on that, but that is a project that will take a couple decades. We're still needing to have some discussions with state parks on determining if that is a commitment they want to make.
Well, it's a much needed project, but I'm afraid it's not going to solve all the problems, and you recognize that. So I fully support the project. So
I
if
have a
there's
few
no-
comments.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm sorry. Member Withy, were you finished?
I was just gonna make a motion, but go ahead, Bill.
Okay, so I am kind of concerned about the parking as well. Because there's from what I kind of count in that general area, there's like 21 boat trailer parking spots. And it's my understanding that this is a very heavily used facility. Is there a way to, that we could specifically designate those as boat trailer parking only? I mean, I see it happen all the time. You know, you've got these great big long parking spots and they're supposed to be for boat trailers. And yet you have single vehicles parked in them that make them unusable for the boat trailers. Will there be stenciling to say boat trailer parking only?
Yes, yeah, there will be. So the current parking, there are trailer spaces that are very marginal, but no single car parking. So in the proposed layout, we're actually creating designated single car parking and designated trailer parking to help direct people to appropriate places that they should park. And that is something that during these peak uses, users have a tendency to help regulate that does happen. I think by having places where single cars know where they can park will definitely help. And state parks and ODF&W also know who some of the more frequent guides are. We can also work with them to encourage that they have their customers park in those areas or park over on the spit in that single car parking to help reduce the strain on it.
Okay, that was my major concern with it, with the flow and this plan that I'd seen in there. So I'll defer to Member Withy if he wants to make the motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that the board approve grant 1717 in the amount of $342,000 in building facility grant funds.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of Member Withy's motion, say aye.
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 Aye. No opposition? Thank you very much. And we're on to our next item. Congratulations. Our next
Good luck.
item.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Daryl.
I appreciate the huge amount of work that had to go into just getting the permits for that thing.
We're very fortunate. Daryl is a fantastic partner. But that was a site where there was actually underwater ground penetrating radar to address some of the cultural and historic areas.
Oh.
So.
All right. So next item, grant 1718 for the Port of Bandon Marina and Boat Launch.
Thank you, Chair Jackson, members of the board. With me today, I have Jeff Bergen, Port Manager. This is a project that the port had applied for in discussions. They then withdrew to combine and have one very large project and one impact to recreational boaters. This is a phenomenal project. We're going to fix the boat ramp and docks, maneuvering, and also have a marina that boats can be safe to tie up to. In December with the winter storms, part of the port's marina, actually the piling broke loose and they had boats that were on the section of docks, and thankfully one of the boats was tied to the main walkway, so they did not go free or cause other damage, but it is time that this happens. This is a funding complex project. I have a massive spreadsheet tracking every little percentage by line item, funding type, to make sure that we are taking care of all the different matches and compliance pieces. Staff is recommending approval in the amount of $1,020,899.31 of voting facility grant funds, $145,100.59 in waterway access funds, $762,283 of federal voting infrastructure grant funds. Those funds have already been awarded by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and are waiting for board approval to be able to let the port spend that money. And we also have $61,827 in Federal Clean Vessel Act funds.
What is that?
Federal Clean Vessel Act.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the funds that replace pump outs, dump stations, floating restrooms, and the support the utilities that make them function and the piece of dock that they live on. To match a tremendous amount of money, basically $7,397,000 or $397,389.10 of match from local nonprofits, the legislator, ODF&W. It just goes on and on. The port has done a fantastic job of finding match money. Jeff, you want to add stuff?
Thank you, Janine. Yeah, good morning, Chair Jackson and Vice Chair Early, members of the board, Director Warren. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Had great support with your staff to figure this stuff out, and the timing on this was kind of challenging because we had all these different funding sources. Some of those have limits on when we can spend them and need to spend them by, permitting timelines, and so now we have some contractual timelines as well. We wanted to start off with the marina, but then we combined the launch ramp project into it. The port in-house wrote and received all the permits from all the various agencies for both projects, plus the dredging component, which you'll see in this proposal. It's optimal to dredge with this project because we'll have cleared out in the marina, we'll have cleared that out so that it hasn't been thoroughly dredged for probably 40 years, but it was dredged about 8-9 years ago. The launch ramp at a -2, it'll start to get exposed, the sediment. So that's really critical too, that we dredge that. And we're also relocating some eelgrass in that launch ramp basin so that we have a better channel in the launch ramp basin. The prior permitting constrained that quite a bit. So we were able to go through, work with NOAA Fisheries, get the mitigation plan, and we're going to do that work in-house as well. We have a mitigation site in the outside corner of our marina. We have an old concrete slab that was part of the old historic I think it was Nestle Creamery that was out there a long time ago, and the Mormon truck shop. So it's this big old concrete slab, old piles. We were able to use that as mitigation for the boat launch project because we're expanding the footprint a little bit, and so we had to find some mitigation. We happen to have that, so we're incorporating that into the project. And it's actually a pretty efficient project for us to do because it's right where a lot of their equipment will be mobilizing. They'll be able to lift the old pier out and haul it away. Yeah, it's a big project. The port is putting a lot of its resources into it. You'll see we're even going to take out some loan money to do this, that it's already approved under Business Oregon. The legislature supported our project through ARPA funds, a pretty good amount of that. And yeah, so we're ready to go. This is, again, Janine's help and her staff have been really helpful for us to put the final pieces together here and make it a complete project. So that I'll stop talking, but I could talk about this all day probably.
Thank you. To me, it's encouraging to see agencies getting creative with funding and finding not only private or public government monies from various sources, but also kind of looking at other like you're saying, nonprofits and things like that to help kind of make up some of those differences and get really creative. Are there any questions or comments about this project?
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Go ahead, Val.
Just first of all, this is an incredible project. Congratulations for putting this all together, Jeff. It really is. Well, it's definitely needed. So ironically, the people that I was fishing the last 2 days use that facility a lot, and they are so excited about the plans there. So we spent 2 days talking about it. Anyway, thank you. Thank you to all the people who actually sent in letters and comments also, because it just really helps to reiterate how important that is. I don't really have any questions. Those were just my general comments. When we're ready, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Anybody else have questions or comments?
So, yeah, I too want to applaud you for putting this together. It's a very complicated project. The question I have is, how do you manage all these different sources and all the different rules they're going to have on these pots of funds? Do you see that as being a big challenge?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. We've got good staff capacity. We've got a good supportive commission. And we're laying out our own matrix that's going to look similar to the one you've seen here on all the permitting requirements and the grant reporting requirements. We're already doing ARPA reporting requirements now. My finance director is way up to speed on that. So yeah, we did I don't know if you've seen our pier project that we completed last winter. It's an ADA accessible fishing pier project on the jetty on the lower Coquille River. And that was also, it wasn't multiple project, but it was fairly complicated as well, with numerous permits, numerous grants, and a very tricky pier to design on jetty breakwater, with working with the Corps, all the agencies in the Corps, the civil division, the real estate division, the permitting division, the legal division, a few others, plus DEQ, DLCD, the gamut, right? So that kind of tuned us up, I think, for this project.
Good.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of things to track.
Is the Corps doing the dredging?
No, it's not in the navigation channel.
Okay.
We're outside of that.
Are you going to have one construction contractor that does the whole project?
Well, we'll see. Currently, we do have a contract because we needed to get started. We wanted to give plenty of lead time on this and make sure our cost estimates were good. So we actually have a contract for the marina currently and the dredging component, and that's West Coast Contracting, which is out of Coos Bay. They were actually the contractors that 40 years ago drove the piles in that marina. So they actually know the sandstone bedrock. And the other bidders, they were really uncertain because we don't have great geologic data. We have some old data, but they didn't know how fractural that rock was, and there was some mystery about how those piles were installed 40 years ago. But we actually have, West Coast actually drove those piles. So they were confident about that. They subbed with Ferguson to do the dredging, and they subbed with KPFF engineering to do the final engineering work on the marina. So those two components are actually under contract. What we're going to do is go out for a new bid solicit on the launch ramp project and give both West Coast and Ferguson an opportunity to bid on those. It'll be a competitive bid process, but we're hoping that they will come out fairly competitive because they'll already have mobilized. We should be able to save mobilization costs on it. But we'll have to get underway on that right away to get that bid out. But I think folks know that's what our intention is.
When do you anticipate this being completed?
Probably April 2024. That's probably when we'll get possibly March 2024, but we might be doing some final utility installs on the docks in the spring.
So
our work windows October 1 to February 15.
Yeah. What's under construction? Are you going to maintain operations of the? Yeah.
No, it's closed off.
Closed off, so everybody will have to go next door.
Yeah, boats are going to Charleston for the most part. And we've already coordinated that with the Port of Coos Bay. As far as the launch facility, it will be closed, but that is in the winter when we have a lot less use.
A great project. Good luck. Good job.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Val.
So
Are there any
again,
other questions
congratulations.
or comments? Colleen, any questions or comments? Okay, go ahead, Val.
Again, congratulations. I look at this as being similar to the project that we funded at Rainbow, just north of you. So with that, I would like to make a motion to approve, subject to legislative approval of the agency's 23-25 budget, $1,020,899.31 in voting facility grant funds, $145,159 in waterway access grant funds, $762,283 in federal boating infrastructure grant funds, and $61,827 in federal Clean Vessel Act funds, for a total of $1.9+ million from the 23-25 boating facility grant fund to match $7,397,389.10 of cash administrative match for the total project for grant. What was it? Oh, 1718 for the Port of Bandon. Sorry.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. No opposed? Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming up. It sounds like a really
you.
interesting and much needed project.
Thank you very
Chair
much.
Jackson, if I could, just before Jeff leaves, I appreciate all the acknowledgement the board gave Jeff. I think we talk a lot about public facility providers, and I had a chance to talk with Jeff when we were out on our road show this fall. And his job would probably be easier to just not do these things, but if you go use a public boat ramp, someone like Jeff has to be there to fight through the permitting and the funding and the structures. And I just really appreciate what you do for boaters, because it'd be easier for you to not. You could, your life would probably be a lot less complicated. And so, you know, I just hope boaters start to learn what their local facility providers do to make boating happen. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Good job.
So
I'm
we've
very
been,
excited to see this project because it's right in my area. So
Good. Thank you.
okay, so we've been at this about an hour. We have 2 more agenda items to cover. Do we want to keep going, or would we like to take a 15-minute break?
Keep going.
Keep going. All right. Is Josh? He heard that as his entrance cue. All right, so we're
Very
now
dramatic of you.
item D, updated rules language.
Thank you.
And before you get started, I just want to say you and your team had a monumental undertaking, and thank you for doing it.
Well, thank you. So for the record, my name is Josh Mahalam, Environment and Policy Program Manager for the Oregon State Marine Board. So this agenda item has to do with our local water body rules, which are OAR Chapter 250, Division 20. Myself and the members of the current board have had a hand in amending some of those rules in recent history. If you read through the entirety of the chapter, I don't know if I necessarily advise that, but if you do, you'll find that it's pretty inconsistent, often duplicative, and contains quite a lot of, in some ways, challenging to interpret language. This isn't surprising given the rules have been written over the course of 64 years by easily over a dozen people in my position. Given the fact that you know, we see all these inconsistencies, we began working on an administrative overhaul of the entire division. The lion's share of the work does not substantively change on the water rules, but instead brings consistency to organization and wording. Some of those non-substantive changes that we're proposing include organizing all the local rules in a nested county water body structure, with a few exceptions for multi-county systems. Another big change was just using consistent language. There are many different ways that people chose to write a person must do this or must not do that. So we brought consistency to that. And we also eliminated a lot of the redundancies with statewide rules, particularly the statewide slow-no wake rule for moorages and boat accesses. That rule is relatively recent, but prior to that, there were dozens of examples of, this boat launch had a 200-foot slow-no wake, or this one had 150. So we took those out because they are now superseded by the statewide rule. We did take the opportunity when kind of overdoing doing over this whole section to make some other changes that it can be construed as substantive, but we believe are logical, bring the rules up with current technology, and are in the best interest of boating safety while not negatively affecting boating opportunities. These include converting all 3 and 5 mile per hour speed zones to slow no wake. So a little backstory there. To make enforcement easier for law enforcement, we adopted a standard definition for slow no wake in 2015. Since that time, anytime we designate a slow speed zone, we are always using that slow no wake language. However, there are still many historical examples where we have both 3 and 5 mile per hour speed zones. In this proposal, we're proposing to change all those to that slow no wake language that's been more recently adopted. The second substantive-ish change was extending the statewide slow no wake rule to all officially designated and marked swim zones. So the reality is that many designated swim zones are already given individual buffers in local rules. For instance, there's a local rule that says on Foster Reservoir, this swim zone has a 200-foot buffer. There are also several counties that have, 200-foot buffer throughout the county around swim zones. We think it's logical to extend that statewide to those areas that aren't already given an explicit 200-foot buffer for just the safety of all water users. Another substantive change proposed is to extend water skiing regulations to all towed water sports. There are over a dozen examples of water ski specific rules on individual water bodies. All were written in the 1980s, early 90s, or prior to that, before things like wakeboarding, wake surfing, and tubing were popular. We believe the intent of those initial rules was to include all towed water sports as they exist now. So we suggested a definition for towed water sports and to take out water skiing regulations and just put those, or include all towed water sports in them. And then on a similar note, we're preparing to eliminate exceptions to speed rules for water skiing on safe drop-offs and landings. There's 10 water bodies that have provisions to allow boats to operate at a speed above the otherwise restricted speed if they are engaged in water skiing in a safe drop-off or landing. We believe those safe drop-off and landing rules, given when they were written, were needed when water skiers needed to physically take off from docks and shallow areas because boats could not, pull them up on plane. This practice is no longer standard and is very likely a safety concern because I don't think that those rules reflect current technology. We're also proposing to eliminate that safe drop-off and landing and therefore make anyone water skiing subject to the same speed rules that otherwise exist on a body of water. So just a couple other things. The new rule language and organizational structure was proposed formally with the Secretary of State in December. We had a comment period that ended just last week. We had a couple comments, one of which I'll bring up here at the end. At this point, the rules are ready to be filed and made permanent with the board approval, along with any amendments that the board proposes. I'll close by saying that staff are going to continue to look at other divisions in our rules to see what other ones may need to be kind of updated, reorganized, just brought up with the times. Likewise, if the board feels that there are anything in our rules and anything in chapter 250 that they would like to see revisited, please bring that to the attention of staff. We'd be happy to bring back other chapters or other section of rules for us to take a closer look at. Because again, many of our rules, not just local rules, were written in the 60s, 70s, and things were different in many ways back then. One thing I'll bring up, about that commenter, he brought up the fact that we have dozens of water bodies that are regulated as electric motor only. This term used to be synonymous with slow no wake speed, or at the very least, very slow. But that's certainly no longer the case with today's technology. So I see that that's probably something that we'll want to talk about in the very near future as electric boat technology starts to have the capabilities of, outboards of yesteryear. I will close with that, Chair Jackson, and kick it to you.
Thank you, Josh. I also appreciate this because last week I had an opportunity to try to find a specific rule. And there were, on the Willamette in Portland, and there were infinitely many places I had to look before I actually found the rule. So this would have made my life last week a lot easier. Anybody else have questions or comments for Josh?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
First of all, I appreciate you doing this. I think this has long been needed, so thank you. Will this require you issue a whole new rule book so I don't have to compare the changes with the old one?
Member Withy, we prepare a new rule book for law enforcement every year anyway, because even when we don't do big overhauls, there's always new rules. Part of the impetus behind doing this, though, was that we're going to try to take some steps this year and beyond to make our rules more, to your very point, a little more accessible to the interested public. And so by standardizing language, condensing some of it, we have an eye on creating some sort of more readily, easily interpreted document for the public to see boating rules throughout the state, not only the local rules, but also carriage requirements and things that you need to know when boating in Oregon. Director Warren.
Josh, you might talk about, for the members of the public, and maybe that was what Member Withy was getting at, from the time you file these with Secretary of State, if they go look at our rules, are they going to see a big marked up version, or are they going to see the current rules? How's that process work?
They would, so for example, if we filed them tomorrow, if you went to look at the Secretary of State's OARs, Chapter 250, you would see all the proposed language replace all the old language. Right now, if you looked it up, you would still see everything as is. What's in front of you today in the giant document with all the markups, that's just a proposal until we formalize it.
So you will be eventually producing the new rule book, but it'll be some time.
Part of the timing of this was to get it to this board meeting, as the rule books that we produce typically came out in the early spring.
One of the comments was the definition of total water sports that you use is different than what the legislature requires. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, and it's another good point brought up by that commenter, Member Withy. So we were very explicit in saying for this chapter only, towed water sports means all definitions of towed water sports that include wake surfing. The definition that the legislature used for the education chapter separates wake surfing out because the education requirements are different. By keeping it just pertinent to these and not extending it to anything else, I don't think that we're in. The definitions in ORS 3649 are applied to that education chapter. These apply to local rules. I don't think there's a conflict there. And if there is a conflict, the Secretary of State would let us know, and there's ways we could change this language to make sure that our intent is captured.
I fully support this initiative.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? So I was going to ask pretty much the same question about responding to that person's comment versus that. So any other questions or comments? Member Early?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a question, Josh, in order to address the comment about the electric motors, especially with the new technology, that would require an open rulemaking process. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I think that would be a big enough conversation that I didn't want to include it in something that is truly mainly focused on organization, because I think that's a good substantive conversation that we should have. And if the board's interested in that, I am happy to put that on as an agenda item in one of the upcoming meetings, because it's, I can tell from my experiences at the boat show just a couple weeks ago, the electric motor technology is becoming not only more prevalent, but also cheaper and more powerful. And it's something that we should make sure that our rules, applied to those situations.
So that was my point. I think that we do need to have that on the, as a beginning conversation in one of the future meetings. I had kind of made note of that for our board meeting timelines, but maybe it's appropriate to mention that here since that's where the comment originated.
Thank you.
And other than
Any other-
that, I like the fact that we are cleaning things up. It is very nice to have some consistency. And I agree with Chair Jackson. When you need to go find something, it's difficult.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that the board approve item D, local rule reorganization and standardization of language as proposed by staff.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the package that Josh presented to us. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We have no opposed. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
And we're on to item E, the board timeline. One thing I was going to say before we get started is that staff have added a few methods to make sure that they capture the desired mentions of future topics. So they show up on our board agendas each time a board agenda is printed, and also a few weeks after the meeting, Jennifer sometimes sends out another reminder. So if you do have items for future meetings that you'd like to see discussed, please do email those to Jennifer and CC Larry and me.
Thank you for that, Chair Jackson. I think the key there is the staff want to talk about what you want to talk about. So some of these agenda items take a lot of time, and so it's helpful if we're bringing the things that you all are interested in. With that said, I wanted to point out just two things now. One is I snuck in there for April a registration section update. Registrations is kind of the engine of our agency, and it's the one area that if you're an Oregon voter, you're probably going to interact one way or another with, whether it's through mail or calling in. And it's been a long time, I think, since we've given an update on that section and kind of some of the highlights of what they do. They're a great team. Andrew Pop's newer manager, he can't claim new anymore, and is doing some really good things with that team. So would like him to come in April and just talk about the registration section, what they do, some of the challenges and opportunities there. And then to the point earlier, I've added a note to add on the slow no wake as it relates to electric rules topic for a future agenda item. So got that noted, and unless the board's opposed, I'll plan on having a registration section update in April.
For April too, I would like to see some kind of an update on what we talked about in the director's report with the complaint process. And then in the June meeting with the outfitter guide professional standards, maybe we can have an update on the GACs addressing the professional and ethical standards for outfitters and guides.
I was looking at the calendar the other day, and I thought the meeting was in July 2023 instead of June. I would prefer it to be in June, so.
Remember on the odd years, we have the meeting in June instead of July so that we can get the grants approved and get money flowing earlier. If we wait till July, we lose some in-water work time and we lose some.
I was just looking at the calendar, the Marine Board calendar for the board, and I thought it said July. So
oh, okay.
you might check that.
We'll take a look at that, yeah. In the even years, we do it in July, but in the odds, we do June. So
I prefer June. Thank you.
yeah, good.
Thank you. One other thing that I had on my item of maybe not for April, because it looks like we're getting a little bit big for April, but maybe June or farther out, is just kind of looking at how we do rulemaking and how we do our public commenting processes for hearings, or again, basically making it easier for us to hear from our constituents out in the public.
And I would just like to make a comment in regard. Recently, when we've done rules, it doesn't seem our process is working very well because a lot of the comments are coming to board members' email addresses rather than going to the site that we have set up. So I think we need to take a look at that and see how we can realign our process so the public is using it instead of coming directly to the board members.
Yeah, we can, remember with the Chair Jackson, we can include that. I think it would be good, get timeliness. In terms of going directly to, I think some of that's a function of, it's only been in the last 3-4 years where all the board members have had government email addresses, and the unfortunate piece about government email addresses is that they follow a very prescriptive format. And this is a problem I hear other boards experiencing as well. All the way to, you know, sometimes unfortunately threatening and different things like that. And in the past, there was kind of a wall because if you wanted to email the board, you emailed a generic and then it was sorted out through Jennifer to distribute to your emails that weren't public. Once you get that government email, it doesn't take a you know, Craig dot with you at, you know, and most people, so unless you have a kind of maybe a short name you use, Andy instead of Andrew, something like that, Joshua instead of Josh. Those are the only times. So I think it'd be a good discussion. I think just, you know, keep in mind that it's pretty common now for folks to figure out how to just.
Yeah, I think we're all after a process that works
Yeah.
for public participation and for
Yeah.
efficiency as far as the board considering their input.
Yeah.
Any other questions, ideas for future items? Well, it sounds like staff has some requests from us to follow up on for the next 2 board meetings. Are there any other items for the good of the order? I think we're adjourned.
We're still live here for just a moment. Let's see, Colleen. Jennifer's gonna end the live stream here.